Welcome back. I'm back after 1 month to create a tech video for once. I've been getting a lot of requests for more videos lately, and I actually have a topic that we can discuss. Now, just like most of my videos, this is going to be mostly a discussion and a demonstration, but there's going to be a lot of discussion in this particular video because there's a lot I want to cover. If you're looking for fast, quick tech videos, Linus Tech Tips is just a click away. Or photonic induction if you want to see stuff explode. Anyway, when you think of orphaned products, you often think of, the old classic Macintoshes or DOS machines, or which I don't even call those orphaned. And hell, even the Apple II isn't really an orphan product because people still make software for the damn things and hardware. Go figure. But there's one orphan product that I think we can all, once you see what I mean, we can all agree on this. And we're not talking about the PowerPC line either, the G5s, the G4s. What we're talking about is a product that's relatively recent in the tech ecosystem within the past 10 years, hell, within the past 7 years. And if you've read the title, you're going to know what it is anyway, so what am I doing here? Let's get on with it. So, the first generation iPad, which I happen to have one right here. The first generation iPad is a product that there are plenty of these out in the wild that still work fine. There's nothing really wrong with the iPad 1. But it is completely orphaned. There's not much you can do with it anymore. I mean, really, guys, there isn't much of anything you can do with an iPad 1. And the price of a used iPad 2 is so low that why would you waste your time with an iPad 1? So for that reason and others, we're going to declare the iPad 1 a complete, utter, useless gadget. I mean, it is useless, and that is by design, in a way. When Apple set out to close the ecosystem, to sell their products in a vacuum, to distribute software in that vacuum, and nowhere else, they essentially sealed the fate of the iPad 1 and all succeeding iPads after they're about 4 or 5 years old by design. This was no accident. Apple does not want their products to be around forever. But let's look at the other side of that coin, too. It costs money and resources and time to develop applications for any device, and be it an iPad, a Mac, a phone, what have you, Android. It takes energy. And most people do that for money. They want to make money. So they develop applications for current technology. Except for the Apple II land, which, well, that's kind of like it's run by its own rules. So in addition to the general aging, wear and tear of technology, stuff gets old, it breaks, it needs parts, it needs service. You also have to deal with the fact that new technology is constantly emerging. So what I'm saying is processors change. System on chips completely change from generation to generation. Just so many changes in the technology gradually that they accumulate over time, and they become major leaps from 1 year to the next, to the next, to the next. While the iPad 1 isn't even a decade old, it is old enough to be completely left in the dust. Which means that app developers are no longer developing apps for the older processor, the older system on chip, the older hardware in general. And it doesn't make sense to do so when the product is 6 to 7 years old. It almost doesn't make sense to do that at all. Because again, the energy and resources that you're spending developing apps, you want to be developing for the most current hardware. I believe right now the iPad 2 is possibly one of the most popular iPads. So developing for the iPad 2 makes sense from a financial standpoint because the user base is there. Whereas the iPad 1, not so much. It was an early product. It was their first shot at a tablet computer in modern times by Apple, the Newton being obviously the earlier one. So it doesn't make sense to develop for old operating systems and old chipsets. So planned obsolescence is really the topic of the day. Planned obsolescence isn't as hurtful as it initially sounds. I know how that might come off to some people. But planned obsolescence is just a byproduct of evolving technology. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to leave that in the video. So, what does this all have to do with this iPad on my desk? Well, this particular iPad 1 was purchased by my employer, so it doesn't really belong to me. It's one that I'm essentially borrowing, if you will, but it's probably going to get shredded anyway, so what's the point? So this iPad 1 was purchased as part of a pilot program. We had some staff members that requested iPads for their job functions, and we decided to buy a couple of iPads. Now, at the time, the iPad 1 was the only iPad, and we bought 3 of them to use as part of a pilot. The pilot was widely successful. The people who needed them or asked for them, they quickly found all the apps they needed for their particular job functions, and they rolled with it. By the time the OK came through to purchase more of them, the iPad 2 had been released. And the iPad 2 offered more features and more functionality, lighter weight, a thinner shell. So it was kind of a home run. The iPad 2 featured two cameras, one forward, one reverse. The iPad 1 surprisingly does not have a camera, and I just figured that out today. The iPad 2, of course, had double the memory from 256 gigs to 512. Did I say gigs? I meant megs. 512 megabytes, half a gig. Capacity didn't really change, and neither did the pricing. The iPad 2 16 cost $500, which is exactly what the iPad 1 cost, according to Wikipedia. And the 64 gig model was also available, as well as the iPad 1, and it was essentially the same price. The iPad 1 and the iPad 2 share very few specs. Very few parts are shared between the two models. The iPad 1, it has the A4 system on chip, whereas the iPad 2 has an A5. And I don't know how the breakdown is within the system on chip, like what does it use for a graphics processor or an audio processor, etc., etc., etc. But I'm not going to dig into that anyway. They both feature the same speed processor, but the iPad 2 features an A9 rather than an A8 Cortex processor. The actual GPU is, I believe, discrete aside from the SoC. The iPad 1 is a PowerVR SGX 535, whereas the iPad 2 is an SGX 543MP2. So, a little different. Anyway, same screen size, same resolution, same DPI rating. I believe it's 132 pixels per inch, 1024 by 768. But surprisingly, the iPad 1 does not feature a camera at all. I was blown away by that. Because I remember my second iPod, which I bought in about 2010, featured a camera, which I used on many occasions. Surprising. Let's see. This particular one that you see before you is an iPad 1 16 gig, purchased sometime in early 2011, late 2010, if I recall. So let's get on with the show. Before I do that, I want to talk about the iPad in general. Now, I haven't made an iPad video, so I'm going to dump a lot of information out on you guys in this one, so it's going to be long. Just grab your hot cocoa and some popcorn and, do your thing. So, when we first acquired our first batch of iPad 1s, I was highly skeptical. I was worried about durability. I was worried about longevity. I was worried about the non-replaceable battery. Yes, I was a complete skeptic. I did not think the iPad would succeed, especially with the software distribution model that Apple chose, the App Store. I did not feel that it was a worthy product. I thought it was overpriced when a similar Android tablet was nearly half the price. I just wasn't into it. It was unserviceable. As an Apple technician, that was kind of like a shot to the heart because, I mean, if Apple can't trust its own techs to service these, what the hell, man? I was very skeptical. I was looking up screen replacement costs, which were about $160 at the time, and I was horrified. I'm like, every time somebody drops one of these, we're going to be shelling out $150 or more. I was pretty upset. I was very upset about the whole thing. When the iPad 2s were rolling in, within 1 week, we had 2 screen breakages. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So rather than spend the money, now this was early on in the iPad 2's life, probably early 2010, under 2011, yeah, a little while ago. I started looking at self-replacing the screens. As a technician, I have the ability and tools to work on most electronics and the experience. You know, so I figured, why not? I looked into it. So I started replacing the screens for my employer at a cost of it started around $30 a unit, and now it's down to like $10 a unit to replace them. Now they're not Apple supplied parts. These are aftermarket Chinese screens. They're junk. They really are junk. They don't break. They don't break like the original Corning Guerrilla glass. They break easier. They're thinner. You know, they're just not the same quality. But it saves us a ton of money. So within about a week or two, I was replacing screens of, of iPad 2s. And we bought dozens of them. We bought dozens of iPad 2s, most of which are still in use, I might add. Most of them are still in active use. I've only had to retire a handful of them because they were damaged beyond repair. My second fear. Now, the screen issue was a problem. The problem still stands that every time I fix one, I void the warranty. So I make sure I only fix them if they're out of warranty. If they're in warranty, they get sent back to Apple. Now, the other issue I had was battery life. Battery longevity, specifically. The product came out with a 10-hour stated lifespan of battery power. And I'm here to tell you that my issues with battery life or longevity have been completely unfounded. Remember, we bought most of our iPads in 2011 and 2012, and I have had zero out of approximately 150 iPad 2s, I have had 0 battery issues. As a matter of fact, they're still holding a charge long enough for them to not even mention it. So they might have a lifespan of 5 or 6 hours, but that is not an issue yet at all. Ask me how many MacBook batteries I've had fail, and I'll give you a completely different answer. Now, battery issues are not a problem. As a matter of fact, this one here, this is a first generation iPad. I have not plugged this in a month. A month. It's at 94%. And look at that. It still works. Why? Why does it still work? Why, God? Why is this still fully functioning device completely obsolete? And we'll get into that in a little bit. So battery issues were not a problem. The second issue I had was serviceability. Now, the biggest problem I find with the iPad 2s, and the iPad 1s are a non-issue because we have 3 of them and all 3 of them are completely retired and forgotten about. This is one of them. The dock connectors wear out. These 30-pin dock connectors on the iPad 2s, they fail with regularity. I buy them by the bag full, and I replace them whenever I do a screen. So if I have one in for a broken screen, there are a couple of things I do as a matter of course. I replace the screen. I replace the dock connector. and I inspect the entire unit for any additional damage, and I replace and repair what I need to while it's apart. It's so much easier that way. So let's talk about capability. So we know the iPad 1, unlike all succeeding models, does not feature any camera of any kind. But it has environmental sensors. Let's take a look at that list. The iPad 1 remains alone in this. But actually, no, it doesn't. I'm screwing with you. It features an accelerometer, ambient light sensor, and a magnetometer. What the hell is a magnetometer? Let's take a look at that. It measures magnetism. So that magnetometer is likely what's used to put it to sleep in the event that the lid is closed. This doesn't have the clip-on magnetic cover that the iPad 2 had optional, but I believe it had a magnetic cover available. Ah, there's a magnet inside this remote, I believe. Is there? No, there's not. Oh, that's in the computer bezel. I don't have any magnets here, do I? Not one. Not a one. Anyway. The iPad 2 features those exact same sensors. However, it also features a gyroscope. A gyroscope is basically a 3D accelerometer, I believe, where it can measure motion in all directions, whereas the accelerometer is really measuring direction. The ambient light sensor is a dead giveaway. The ambient light sensor is actually mounted right here where the camera would be on the iPad 2, and that's just measuring room light, ambient light, to adjust the backlight accordingly. Yes, so that's that. Interestingly enough, the iPad, which one is it? I'm scrolling in the wrong direction here. Where were we? One of them, oh yeah, some of the newer models actually feature a barometer, which is kind of cool. So they can be used to help detect weather changes. It's really interesting. Okay. Like the iPad 2, it also features a 30-pin dock connector, a lock button, volume, and power in the same locations as the iPad 2. It also features a headphone jack, and this appears to be the microphone right there. The audio quality on this model is better than the iPad 2 because it actually features a speaker grill on the bottom, which is kind of nice. This has really nice sound. I was impressed. It may be mono sound, but it's really not bad. If I could legally demonstrate that, I would. Okay. Where the iPad 1 really fails is its compatibility with its own ecosystem. Allow me to demonstrate. So, let's open up the App Store. Now, you'll notice that I've already configured this with my Apple ID. I've got it on my wireless network. I've actually synced it to my iMac over here. I've got a 20-inch aluminum iMac. This is a 2.26 gigahertz model. It's not the latest generation. It's actually an iMac 8.1, which still runs El Capitan, but it will not run Sierra. So it is now into the orphaned category, but it's still fully functional. So let's go back to our iPad, where we have the App Store loaded. You can see this is the older App Store. This is the App Store from OS, was it 5? Let me go back here. iOS 5.1.1. And just for giggles, when was that released? iOS 5.1 was released, wow, October 12th, 2011? Wait a minute. May 7th of 2012. Yes, so this iPad had all of 2 years, 1 to 2 years of being current. How sick is that? This iPad, they're getting back, I'm going to jump around a little bit, I'm sorry. I'm not really sorry, but this iPad had one of the shortest shelf lives of any Apple product I think I've seen in recent years. This particular one could have been manufactured, and as late as, what was the date I found on that? It was discontinued in March of 2011. And its operating system upgradability and compatibility ended. When was that again? Was it May of 2011? Are you serious? May 7th. So if you bought one of these in March, on May 7th of 2012, you would have received the very last operating system that it was capable of running, because iOS 6 was released the following September. Oh my God. That is horrible. Could you imagine if you bought the $700 version of the 64 gig $700 iPad 1 in March, only to be told in September that your device was completely obsolete? How effing sick is that? Oh man, that's worse than I thought. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to where we were. So we're back in the App Store here, and our 256 megabytes of RAM is probably full by now. Every app that we see here, this device cannot run. Every single app that we see cannot run. Allow me to demonstrate. Here's 101 games released on September of 2014. Let's get it. Let's install it. It's a freebie. It's a freebie. Oh, it's an iPhone app. Never mind. We need an iPhone. I wonder if it'll work. No, maybe not. Let's try this. Let's scroll through. There's no way to search, by the way, for old apps. Like you can sort by date, but let's see. We can narrow it down to iPad. We can sort it by date. Price. We'll just look at free ones. Category. Doesn't matter. Let's look at all categories. But anything released after about 2011 will be incompatible with this stupid thing. I'm going to scroll back. I'm still in 2017. I can't sort it in the opposite order, unfortunately. Like ascending or descending. It doesn't give me that ability. I wish it did. I did find one app, though. Let's look at Chrome. Let's search for Chrome. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay. There we go. Install. This is an app that I already own under my account, so it's going to let me just put it on. Not that it costs anything. So I'm going to put in my password. Because this is the days before Touch ID, of course. So I got to type it in manually. Now let's see what happens here. Download an older version. This current version requires iOS 9. Okay, well, we're going to download the next oldest version, which was probably released sometime in 2011 or 12. I was able to get the Facebook app, but again, once again, it is an older version of the Facebook app that is compatible. My point is, none of these, which are ubiquitous apps, are available in current form that will run on this device. So let's install Chrome. I wonder what version it brings us to. It's still installing, oh, there we go. Chrome. So, well, the good news is, it does work with some of the App Store features. The bad news is, there's not a lot out there that you can literally run, or legitimately run. I haven't looked at any jailbreaking ability, but I'm sure there's modifications that you can make to this that you know, Apple wouldn't approve of, but what are they going to do? Sue me? Let's see, what version are we on here? Help? Support. I'm actually just looking for the version. Here we go. Update, create, personalize, delete, control, troubleshoot. Update, sign in, download and install. No, that's not what I want to do. History, share, print, settings. Oh, it must be in settings. About, there it is. Version 29.0. This was released in 2013. So 4 years out. 4 years out. I just could not imagine paying. I mean, it's like the people who bought the loaded quad-core, water-cooled G5 towers just like a day before Steve Jobs waltzed on stage and said, by the way, we're switching platforms. I mean, yay for Apple, but you just spent $5,000 to $6,000 on a computer that is now obsolete. Congratulations. You might as well have taken that money and bought a used Buick, I guess. Anyway, I was able to find an app called Crossroads. This is a game that is, I believe, is this the one I was looking at? It's similar to Frogger, only with mice. So, but take a look up, and it crashed. And that's what's been happening. I'd find an app that would be compatible, but it would crash, just like that. I've actually played the game, and it worked. But now, that. So that sucks. What does restore do? Restoring, please wait. Oh, that probably just re-downloads it. Oh, you know what? I think it might be a demo. Alright, well, anyway, let's go back to the App Store to see what else we can't download. I'm going to do a quick search to see what apps are still out there that could work. Hold on just a second. I just read about a forgotten feature in the App Store that Apple had introduced that would prevent, like for example, when I downloaded Google Chrome, it didn't just say, sorry, your device sucks, go to hell. It actually said, here's a version that will work. And it downloaded that older version. So maybe this locked ecosystem isn't so bad. Facebook did the same thing. But when it comes to like productivity apps and games, it doesn't appear to be so easy. Let's take a look at Angry Birds. I believe Angry Birds is the app that put the iPad on the map. Let's see. Now, Angry Birds is old enough to have had a version that would have been compatible with the iPad 2. So let's see if we can't maybe do something about that. Let's see. iPad, see all. Maybe we can find the original version. And the damn thing crashed again. Son of a bishi. I'm going to restart the device. I'm going to power it off. And we're going to do a power on test. Let's see how long it takes for this thing to power on. While it's doing that, to my surprise, and I am surprised, when I logged into my Apple ID, it not only let me do so, not that it wouldn't, but it did. It allowed me to download my recently purchased iTunes songs from the cloud. And it worked. It actually worked. Couldn't believe it. I was able to go into music. I'm sorry, not music. I was able to go to the iTunes store and view all of my music that I had recently purchased, and it gave me the option to download. So I tried it with one of my albums, and it actually worked. I could not believe it. I thought it would be like, I'm sorry, your iPad sucks, go to hell. That should be a warning. That should be an error message for something. We're sorry, your computer sucks. Buy a new one. Anyway, open that wallet of yours and spend some of it. Huh? Come on. You can do it. You can afford an Apple, or at least you could 7 years ago. So, you know. Yeah. So look at what I've been able to transfer stuff not only from this iMac over here, but also from the web. One of the albums I downloaded was I believe it was a Jan Hammer album, and it was the Oh Yeah album, And I downloaded it, and it let me. And I just bought it a couple days ago. So, yes, I am a slight music snob. The stuff that I listen to is not necessarily what you hear on the radio, but I find that better. I mean, I've got a lot of Rush, Steely Dan, Tangerine Dream, Robert Plant, Grateful Dead, Donald Fagen, Death Cab for Cutie, Ahmad Jamal, Andy Summers, Chick Corea's Electric Band, that's a good one. War, I do have a Third Eye Blind album. Yellow Jackets, XTC, you know, that's the kind of stuff I'm really into, in case anyone was wondering. But yeah, I'm a bit of a music snob. I listen to what musicians listen to, mostly, I think. Session musicians. But anyway, I was able to download some stuff, and it let me do it. But anyway, Stone Temple Pilots. I forgot I had that on here. What else? So, some of the built-in apps that the iPad 1 came with, they are fairly Spartan in quantity, and they don't work. Well, some of them don't work. So, for example, Messages, I believe, does still work, and it should be linked to my Apple ID. So, but for some reason my contacts didn't load. The Contacts app still functions. The Calendar app still functions, I believe. But I don't think I have anything synced to my Apple ID. I think it's mostly on my Google account, and I didn't sync it. But look at this. Look at this. Is how the old... Let me see if I can show you that. The original Calendar app looked like a real calendar. I liked it. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I love that. The new one is a little more, you know, function over form. But this was like, I mean, it even has the page tear lines on the top here. I mean, they really went all out to make this look like a day planner. That's what they were gunning for. They wanted to kill off the day planner business. And they really did. It worked. But the YouTube app no longer functions. It is useless. This is what comes up when I try to load the test video. Oh no! The version of YouTube you're using isn't supported anymore. Your computer sucks. We're sorry. Alright, so that doesn't work. The Videos app is useless without a fucking camera. But it's there. I believe the object here was to download video content from iTunes. They wanted this to be a content-consuming device. This is where you would buy music, TV shows, movies, and you could put it on a dock and connect it to your flat-screen TV. That was where Apple, I think, was really trying to go with this, and it turned into something else. It turned into an app-crunching machine, and they succeeded in that. It was meant to be a complement to the iPhone, or a gateway drug to the iPhone. You give your grandmother an iPad, and she uses it for a little while and says, "Johnny, I need an iPhone." But anyway, because Grandma now knows how the interface works, she knows where things are, how to acquire content, where to get her porn, it's all in one device. Yes, Granny was a dirty woman. I'm sure she was. She's human, right? Anyway, we're all humans. Most of us. There's also the newsstand, which I doubt still works. Let's take a look. Can I subscribe to the New York Times? It says, you can download magazines and newspapers in the App Store. Okay, so I'm going to click on the Store button, which does jack diddly squat. So there's that. Okay, fine. Be that way. The Reminders app is still there. I don't use that on my Mac, so why would it be here? There's nothing in there. I do really like the analog look of the interface. I mean, you've got a lined piece of note paper. The current version of this app looks far different from that. Let's see. Contacts did in fact load, but they're all synced, and I'm not going to show you who I know because you might call them. So, there are some weird people out there, you know that? Really are. Anyway. Game Center. Now this is interesting. It shows you a list of current games that are on the App Store. It's loading this stuff dynamically. So when you powered this thing up 10 years ago, the content or the titles would have been different. So it's showing you the top games in the App Store. So The problem with that, however, is that none of these games are compatible with iOS 5. So that's kind of, yeah. If I try to get this game, what does it do? I'm going to put in my magic word. And it's going to tell me, it should tell me, that I need iOS 7 or later. And that is pretty much the story of the day. Everything requires at least iOS 6, some require 7, some even require 9. But that's really unfortunate. Why would somebody buy this iPad? I don't know why. I don't know why anyone would pay legitimate money for this thing, because again, it's incompatible within its own ecosystem. It is basically a completely orphaned product. This one is in mint condition, hasn't been charged in a month, and still sports 90% battery remaining. It can still send and receive mail. It can still lightly browse the web at a snail's pace, but it can still do so. In fact, let's see what it can do. Let's see, even Apple's website takes forever to load. Oh, that was the other controversial issue with the iPad 1. It was, of course, Flash and Java are two things that it doesn't do. And in 2011, 2010, 90% of the web was Flash and Java, it seemed. So that was kind of a problem. But anyway, let's see what it can do here. Yeah, look at this. This is awful. It's so slow compared to devices made today. This is Apple's agreement for the use of the iPad, I guess. Oh, my neighbor needs a new car battery. Did you just hear that? Anyway. Guy just bought a used Saab. What is that, a Saab 97X, I think, or some crazy overpriced sedan from 2003. Anyway. Alright. Yeah, okay, thank you for that. So I got the legal thing. Alright, yeah, I don't care about that. Why did it load that? Let's go to, I don't know, AOL.com. How far are we into this video? 10, probably 20 minutes? When Apple first released the Macintosh 128, of course it was called the Macintosh then, just the, yeah, as this was called the iPad, not the iPad 1. When they released the Macintosh 128, it had a 400K single-sided floppy drive. It had a limit of 128 kilobytes of RAM. I mean, it had no expansion capabilities internally whatsoever. Whatever it couldn't do, the serial cable wasn't worth doing in Apple's mind. And that was it. That was the Macintosh 128. And it floundered very quickly. It almost failed as a product. They had to scramble to release its successor, the 512. And very quickly, the 128s, the ones that were still around, 2, 3, 4 years later, they were basically useless in the ecosystem in which they were created. 3.5-inch floppy media quickly became double-sided 800K double density. And where was the Macintosh 128 left there? I mean, if you went to go buy software, developers weren't developing for the old 128. They were developing for the new 512. So Apple had an option. They had an ability for you to bring your Mac 128 to an Apple dealer, and they would convert your Mac 128 into a 512 or a Mac Plus. So Apple created a kind of a customer goodwill program. I mean, it wasn't really goodwill, but it was the ability for anyone with an older product, the first generation version of the Mac, to, at a reduced cost, obtain the latest functionality with their older products. Apple did no such thing with the iPad 1. If you bought the 64 gig iPad 1 in May of 2011, you were screwed. I mean in March of 2011, you were screwed. You had maybe 1-2 years of full software support, and that was it. And we had this discussion when we made the decision to buy the iPad 2s. I brought it up. I said, what if this happens again? Needless to say, I lost that argument. And it was for the better, because the iPad 2s, we were able to, of course, run the latest software up until very recently. And we definitely got our money's worth out of them. We had no battery issues. We had dozens of screen breakages, but that wasn't an issue. I took care of those pretty quickly. But, in fact, I've got one sitting on my desk right now waiting to be fixed. Take that back, I have two. There are two of them that are broken, and I need to fix them. But anyway, the iPad 1, it was a very quickly orphaned product. It was Apple's entrant into the modern world of tablet computing. We're not talking about the Newton here, of course. It was a successful product launch. It got the name out. Oh, and there's one other problem with the iPad 1. Because of its thick casing, it is incompatible with all iPad 2 cases and accessories. Well, anything that depends on the case thickness to be consistent. It may fit in a slipcase, but I wouldn't count on it. I mean, it wouldn't fit correctly anyway. One thing that I do like about the iPad 1, though, is that bitchin' speaker grill. Look at that. I mean, this thing sounds... I wish I could find a... Let's see if I can watch one of my own videos on it. I doubt it. Let's give it a try. Let's see. Oh, I wonder if there is a GarageBand equivalent on this thing. One of the apps that I wanted to get for an iPad was the IK Oscillator by Korg. It's a lot of fun. I don't think it'll work on an iPad 1, but maybe we'll look into it. Alright. Let's see. Search YouTube. BBISHOP. Ah! Touchy keyboard. Looks like BBISHOPPCM bread is a top search for that query. Let's take a look. This one actually has music in it, so we're gonna see if it plays. I'd be blown away if it did. Let's make it widescreen. Still loading. Come on, baby. Volume all the way up. Let's see. This is my content, so I can play it without fear of retribution. Come on. Come on. Yep. It's loading in QuickTime? Really? Okay. Here we go. It's loading. Is there a volume control for the player? That's as high as it goes. It's not very loud. Serene. Okay. This is getting sucky. But I assure you it has really awesome sound. But I can't demonstrate that because of copyright and stuff, It actually plays YouTube videos. Now that's, of course, outside of the app. Alright, I'm going to cut that off. It took forever to load, but it loaded. That was surprising. Let's go back to the App Store. I want to check something else out. I wonder if I can upgrade the YouTube app. And can I get GarageBand for it? Let's take a look. You got time, right? Come on. You got the popcorn, you got the soda out. You got time. So we're going to have some fun. Angry Birds was a bust, naturally. Let's try YouTube. YouTube. Okay, latest version is from July of 2017. Let's see if it loads. While we're talking about iOS devices and waiting for apps to load, oh yes, there is an older version available and it just sees it. Okay, alright, maybe this doesn't suck so much. Okay, alright, maybe my complaints were unfounded for that as well. I bought my first iOS device 3 years ago, and it was an iPhone 5S, and it still works. I still have it, and it's beautiful. Never broke the screen, never had a problem with it, never had to have warranty work, nothing. It's been the most reliable piece of technology I have ever owned. I know the crotchety, oh, Apple sucks, and that's kind of my mantra. I don't really like Apple anymore, but I have to say when it comes to devices like the iPad and the iPhone, they really know what they're doing. I can't say they know what they're doing on the Mac front, but everything else, it seems to be decent stuff. I've had 3 iPods, and I've never had a problem with a single one of them. My oldest iPod I still use on a regular basis. It's about 7 years old now, and I have not had a single problem with it. So, I got to say that Apple, as much as I talk down about them, they know how to build a product that works out of the box. Yes, you're going to have a few glitches. Yes, you're going to have a percentage of warranty claims. Yes, there are built-in design flaws, and Louis Rossmann does a great job of talking about and discovering and repairing those problems. Yes, there are issues with their designs. But personally, I don't have a lot of problems with them. Other than about a half a dozen CD drive failures in some of the older products, I haven't had a lot of complaints about them. Alright, so let's go. So we got YouTube. It's an older version, but it seems to work okay. Let's see what else we can get. GarageBand. Let's see. I bet you they charge for the iOS version. No, they don't. Let's get it. This could be fun. You must update to iOS 10.3. Oh, you suck. You suck. Alright, well, that's unfortunate. IK Oscillator. Oh, what am I searching in? No. I wanted the App Store. There we go. Unless they pulled it. Korg IK Oscillator. $10. Now, if I bought it, I'd be wasting $10 on something that won't work. I don't know if I want to do that. It's $10. Oh, maybe another time. That's lunch for a day, okay? I'm not going to throw lunch away. Well, anyway, so there you have it. This is going to be the conclusion of our video. I think I covered everything. Let's take a look at the settings menu. It's not dissimilar from what you're used to on current iOS versions. You have your basic settings, Wi-Fi, notifications, location services. It's all basically the same crap. Brightness is currently set, I think, to a lower. Yeah, there we go. That's as bright as it goes, and look at that. It's got automatic brightness turned on. We can change the background, of course. It has a picture frame mode, which is nice. You can use this as an expensive picture frame if you wish. Let's see. General. About. It is a 13.8 gig capacity. Of course, that is after the operating system is loaded. It is a 16 gig. It has 285 songs loaded on it. Anyway. Running currently iOS 5.1.1. And there you have it. So, any questions, comments? You know what to do. Have a nice day. Drive safe.